The stories shared on It Takes Balls are unique to the individual sharing. Always speak with your trusted medical provider for treatment options specific to you. Welcome back to It Takes Balls, presented by Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation. Today I'm joined by Mike Oshinski. He's a testicular cancer survivor of over 40 years. Mike, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Stephen, for having me. I'm glad to be here.
And before we start, learning about who you are and your testicular cancer story, I know you wanted to give some quick thank yous.
I did. Thank you. All the glory to God for His grace and mercy, and thanks for the prayers that I had during the time that I was going through this. I especially want to thank my parents, Mike and Kathy Oshinski, for all their love and support. They were in their late 30s at the time when I was going through this, so that was a lot for them. Thanks to my brother, Scott, to my grandparents who are deceased, my John and Doris Oshinski, and Jim and Lil Richardson, my grandparents. And then my Uncle Tom and Aunt Karen, they would always come up on Thursday nights to the hospital and bring pizza, so it was a great spirit lift. I also want to thank my family, my friends, my high school friends at the time and the community for all their love and support as well. Doctors, nurses, hospital staff, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, it's impossible to do it alone. So
Yeah.
shout out to everybody. Before
Yeah.
we get into your testicular cancer, tell me about who you are.
Yeah, so I live in West Michigan in the greater Grand Rapids area. I have my wife, Mary. I have a son. His name is Mike, MJ. I have a stepdaughter, Olivia. We live in the West Michigan area. I work in project management for a pharmaceutical company in the area. I enjoy sports. I love play pickleball quite a bit and golf. And just love where we live and yeah, so.
You're probably better at golf than I am. I'm great at losing balls.
I've lost many of them over this summer.
So let's talk about your testicular cancer. As I mentioned, it's been over 40 years, I think 42, 43, 42. You were diagnosed at 15, right?
Correct. Yes. Age 15 years old. I just finished my freshman year of high school, and I was diagnosed in June.
What was it that you noticed that, was off about your testicle?
Well, first and foremost, at the time in the early 80s, there was no knowledge or awareness to any type of testicular cancer. I didn't even know there was such a thing. I was an adolescent at age 15. My testicle was probably 2 times the size, and I let it grow and go and go because I didn't know what it was. Being a young teenager, I was embarrassed, to say something. And so it never hurt. There were times where it was like, well, maybe it looks like it's getting a little better. But it manifested itself having spread to my abdomen and having a massive tumor, which I couldn't stand up at. And that's how I ended up in the hospital.
How long was it that you let it go on before you went and saw somebody?
That's a good question. I thinking back, trying to think, I would say it was probably 3-4 months, at least. It was just one of those things where it started out kind of gradual and then it just became very, very large. It was very noticeable. When I had gone into the urologist initially, they took one look at it and didn't even necessarily need to even examine me. They could tell by looking at it. It was that big.
And being 15, like you can't drive yet, at least not legally. So you got to tell somebody. So how do you break the news to your parents or whoever took you to the doctor?
Well, so it was early summer. It was June. I had just finished high school. I was playing baseball. I had a baseball game that particular night. About a week or two before I ended up at the medical center, I was having a lot of pain in my abdomen, and I thought it was athletic related. Maybe I'm not stretching enough, or I pulled a muscle, or this kind of. But then over the course of the 2 weeks, it got exponentially worse. And the night that I ended up going to the medical center, I was in a fetal position. I could not stand up. And so my dad took me to the med center. Doctor did the exam. He didn't have any expertise in testicular cancer or anything like that. He took one look at it and said, "You need to go to urologist tomorrow." And this was in the evening the night before.
And back in the 80s, was it as difficult as it is now to get into the urology office?
Actually, not for me at the time, given the magnitude of what I was going through. I was in at 8 a.m. the next morning.
Nice. Okay, so the urologist walks in. What's the the mood?
Well, so for me, again, I'm an adolescent. I didn't know what I didn't know. My parents didn't know what they didn't know. At the time, again, nobody knew what testicular cancer even was, anything like that. We were all very concerned. Obviously, why am I having this, discomfort? And having taken one look, had a meeting with my parents. I remained in the room, and they asked me, "What did you have? Have you eaten breakfast?" And I had, because they wanted me to go to the hospital right then and there and take it out and that morning. And so it ended up being the next morning.
Oh, wow. So did the word cancer come up in that first appointment at all, or it didn't come up until after?
Not to me.
Okay.
Not to me. My parents did an excellent job of managing information, of what they knew and how to tell me. Again, I'm an adolescent. I'm 15 years old. I'm going through the typical teenage years of just being a young, man, growing into being a young man. And so the word cancer never really came up until after the fact. They knew, but I didn't. And that was probably a good thing for me in the moment, because I was like, okay, I need to have this surgery to get this taken out. Good, finally, kind of thing for me. But I did not realize the magnitude and how far and how massive it was and how far it spread.
And I know your HCG you put here was over 800,000. At what point was that? Was that before or after your orchiectomy?
That's a good question. I believe it was after, the blood work, before I started chemo. It was 853,000.
That's
And the normal
crazy.
was 5. Yes.
Geez. Okay. So how quickly after your orchiectomy did you start the next steps?
So the next step, I don't remember exactly, but it was I needed some time to recover from the surgery itself, from the orchiectomy. So it was about between 1 and 2 weeks I was in for chemo. And again, for me, going into the hospital, I did not know what chemotherapy was going in. I just knew I needed to be treated. I had no idea what I was in for. And so I would say I was in by the end of June. So within 2 weeks, I recovered from my orchiectomy, incision, and that kind of stuff. And I was in the hospital ASAP starting chemo.
Thankfully, you were post 1974 when the implementation of cisplatin happened. Talk to me
Yes.
about. I know you met with Dr. Einhorn, right, at some point.
So my local doctor in the greater Grand Rapids area, his name is Dr. Smiley. He was my oncologist. Dr. Marquis was my urologist. Dr. Smiley had a connection at IUPUI with Dr. Einhorn. So Dr. Einhorn was guiding him in terms of my treatment. But I had not actually met Dr. Einhorn until a bit later, and I can tell you that as we get into the story more.
Yeah. So, okay, so what chemo regimen did you do back in 1982? I'm not trying to
So
rhyme.
yeah, so I was on the chemo cocktail. It was cisplatin, bleomycin, and Velban. So it was a 5-day stay in the hospital, which the first day was all three. Violently ill. I can't even describe. I can't put into words how ill I was that first day. And then the remaining 4 days were cisplatin. So then I would be done on Friday, and then I would go into the doctor's office for, I can't remember if it was Valban or bleomycin in between the treatments. And so I went through 4 cycles the first time, and then I had gone through 4 again, and I get into that in a minute. But I would go in and have that done in between the hospital stays.
Interesting. So you said you were violently ill at the beginning. Did it kind of, after the beginning, did it get easier? Did it continue to worsen?
The first day was the absolute worst. I would be vomiting, my hair falling out, hot, extreme cold, ringing in my ears, loss of feeling in my feet, tongue sores, mouth sores, you name it. I was vomiting probably every 10 minutes for probably 10 hours. And then it would kind of subside by morning. So it would be a very long Monday night when I would be in the hospital.
Jeez. Did you lose your hair back then as well?
Yep.
And what did that do to you as a 15-year-old?
It was very, very difficult. I was at the end of my freshman year, I was excelling as an athlete, kind of building my body, starting to fill out a little bit, playing sports, doing all those things. And then in growing, I haven't grown at all since that time. I'm 6'1" now, and my rest of my family's all 6'4", 6'5". So I think some of it's stunted my growth, but it, um, it was beyond difficult emotionally. I had a lot of love and support from my high school, classmates and the people around me, of course. But it's still very difficult from, as you're a teenager and going through those changes in life to have this on top of it. And the appearance that I had, um, I looked like I lost 40 pounds. I looked like a skeleton. I had no hair, and it was very, very difficult time.
And so your parents not saying the word cancer, or the doctors not saying the word cancer as well. What, like in your mind, what was happening?
So they did say the word cancer after my orchiectomy. So
Okay,
before I
sorry.
got into the chemo, I knew that I had cancer, but I did not realize necessarily how bad it was. They said, okay, you're going to have to go through these 4 cycles of chemo and do this. And then by the end of, after those cycles are done, and so it was like August, September timeframe, then we're going to go down to Indianapolis and they're going to talk about doing the RPLND and other things at that point. So that was kind of how it was framed for me, in the summertime. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll just go through these 4 things and go have this surgery and then get back to being a teenager. But it ended up being a little longer than that. So
I don't know if I want to say you were fortunate or unfortunate that it happened over the summer. Maybe you would rather have missed school. I don't know.
well, I did end up missing school because I had
Okay.
to go through a second round, and I can tell you about that here in a minute. But yeah, so
So the summer of '82 was not a good summer for you.
it's not a good summer for me, nope. And I ended up going through the 4 rounds. Ended up back in the hospital a couple of times in between because of low white blood cell, red blood cell. High, I developed a very high fever. Had to have transfusions, other things. Had issues with seizures with certain medications, all kinds of different things going on over the course of the summer. By the end of the summer, by the end of my 4th treatment, my number from 853,000 was down to normal. But because of the massive size of the tumors that I had, the necrotic type tumors, doctors were not overly confident wanting to do surgery at that point because they're like, well, maybe your counts might rise given the fact you were 853,000. So it was kind of a wait and watch period for a couple months in the fall. I ended up starting going back to school in October, high school, sophomore year. But then my counts started to rise again in the November, December timeframe, and had to go through another round and had some different medications at that time. I ended up on cisplatin and VP16 at the time, which was experimental. And so that took me into the spring of the following year. So that's kind of how it shook out.
Was that experimental still under the guidance of Dr. Einhorn through your
Yes.
local?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That's how I gotten access to it, actually, was Dr. Smiley's connection to Dr. Einhorn and his staff down at IUPUI. And so yeah, now it's etoposide, which is, I think, more commonly used nowadays. But back then, it was all experimental.
Was your experience the second time any different, notably, than the first?
Well, so having had some time off between the October and then I ended up back in restarting the chemo regimen in January. I had, got some weight back. My hair was growing back. I was playing basketball. I actually played on the JV basketball team for a while. So I was feeling good. But once I got back in, the treatments were the same. The Monday nights, the first night, were the same. I was a lot stronger going into it. And so I was able to withstand it more. I think maybe a little better the second time around. Plus, I knew what to expect. The first time I didn't, but it was very difficult.
So did you have to repeat your sophomore year, or did you make it through on time?
True. Yeah, I made it through. I missed about 40 days of school, but I had some good tutoring and other, help along the way to be able to manage and make it through my sophomore year. So,
Nice. So after the second round of chemo, I know you did end up having RPLND, you said. So like what did the scans show after that second round?
so after the second round, so the number. So I'll back up real quick. In between the first and the second round, numbers started to go up. They said we need to do another 4-cycle treatment with VP16. This time with cisplatin. My counts went back to normal after the first of the 4. They said we're going to continue to do all 4 regardless, and then from there, then we're going to do some scans. I had gone to see Dr. Einhorn in between the two, more for consultation, more for them saying we don't want to do any surgery quite yet. We want to see what happens. And then by the time I was done with my second round, it's okay. Now this is pretty certain this is going to happen. So my scans, I still had massive tumor debris, necrotic debris that was visible. But with the numbers being normal, they felt much more confident in me going through that surgery and not having a relapse, because that was a big concern. If I go through the surgery, have a relapse, now I'm back on chemo, having just had surgery and dealing with that. So I felt the care was phenomenal in how they did that. So my second round, if you will, ended in April, and my surgery was scheduled in June. So I had 2 months to put on weight and eat and, all that kind of stuff. I was feeling great, and then in June of 1983 was when I went to Indianapolis and I actually had RPLND. I had a partial liver resection, and I also had necrotic debris removal all at the same time with 2 different surgeons that specialized in each area.
So had the cancer kind of attached itself to your liver?
Yes, yes. So when I went, when I was admitted to IUPUI, it's about a 4-hour drive from where we live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The doctors said, well, the RPLND for sure. We know there's necrotic debris, but we're not overly certain, 100% certain about the liver and how much it's attached. We'll know when we get in there. And so when they got in there, there was a lot of the debris attached to the liver. So they removed about a third of my liver. So moved all my organs aside, got at the liver, took out the necrotic debris off my liver, took out the debris and the lymph nodes, and then the other tumors that were elsewhere. So all in all, it was about an 8 to 9 hour surgery, and I was in the hospital for 19 days.
Oh my gosh! Did Dr. John Donahue do your RPLND?
Dr. Donahue did. So Dr. Donahue. Give me just a second here. I have it written down so I didn't forget it. So Dr. Donahue was my urologist. So yes, he did the RPLND, and then Dr. Williams did the liver resection and necrotic debris. So I actually had 2 surgeons during the single surgery.
Yeah. Well, hey, your insurance got their bang for their buck.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What was your incision like? Because at that time, things obviously over the last 40 plus years have gotten to where they can sometimes do robotic. Now they can just do like a really small incision. But I mean, yours, I imagine, was probably pretty
12 inches. It goes from my xiphoid process right below my sternum down to just below my belt line, around my belly button. And then there are permanent sutures beneath. I can still feel them to this day, some of them. They didn't have the dissolving, technology maybe so much back then. So 12-inch incision.
So 19 days in the hospital. And before that, you were playing basketball. How long did it take you to recover and then get back to, being a young, active male?
Yeah. So this was June of 1983. So it was almost a year later, almost to the date, in the hospital for 19 days. So now we're in July. I I had had an infection in the hospital. When I left and got back to Grand Rapids, I developed another infection because I had an abscess where they had removed the liver and there was pooling of bacteria and other things. So I had to have a drainage tube put in once I was back for a couple weeks until it could heal itself, because the liver regrows itself and it kind of heals from the inside out. So there was a pocket there, and so they needed time for that pocket to heal. Once that pocket healed, there was nowhere. Then that's when they took out the that drainage tube, and so that was probably late July. So starting in August of that year, kind of starting to get back into feeling better, putting weight on, and becoming kind of a normal teenager, even though I wasn't normal. I had a lot of emotional trauma and other things, but physically I had gotten through it.
Well, let's talk about the emotional trauma. I mean, you went through something at 15, 16 that, 99.99% of other guys your age never experienced. So how was that?
It was very difficult. I had the love, the support of family, friends, the community, where I went to high school. So all of that was great. And it was definitely needed, that love and support, prayers, the thoughts, people stopping by, visiting, etc. But as an adolescent teenager, already dealing with the normal teenage stuff and this on top of it, the trauma to this day, I still get shaken when I think about it at times, of the magnitude of what I went through. I don't think I really at the time really maybe consciously understood the magnitude of where I was at. I mean, I was given a less than 1% chance to live when I was first diagnosed. They said, this is so far advanced. They told my parents, your son has a less than 1% chance to live. I was talking to my parents last night, and I had told them more than once, I said, it is a very good thing that you did not tell me that statistic, because I was of the mindset that doctor said I'm going to go through some chemo, I'm going to have surgery, and I'll be done. So that's what I did. But had I known that less than 1% chance, I'm not sure how I would have reacted, but it was a good thing that I didn't know it.
Yeah, I don't think we mentioned it, but you were stage 3C, right?
Yes, the highest stage.
Yeah. But hey, I mean, 40 plus years, here you are alive and kicking. I mean, that's incredible.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Did it give you any street cred? I mean, I know a lot of high school guys probably are into the girls around that time. I mean, did you get any sympathy?
No, not really. I a lot of my friends, they kind of lived it with me. The hospital that I was in was maybe 3 blocks from my high school. So, people would come by and visit me a lot, which I needed. Spirits lifted when you're in the hospital. And, and back in 1982, there were only 3 stations, TV stations. So there wasn't much sports or anything like that to do. And so there was a lot of time to think, and a lot of time feeling lousy, and, just having to deal with that. One thing when you have an illness, there's no going to bed and I'll get up in the morning and, deal with it again in the morning. It's a 24/7, like I feel lousy all the time. I can't get away from it. And the only path to recovery is the chemo process. And so it was very difficult, but I did, once I got through all of it, I just wanted to be a normal teenager, and I didn't want that, I don't know if label's the right word, but I just wanted to be normal and like everyone else and not be thought of as a cancer patient or anything like that. And my friends treated me just like, anyone else. So that was great. And that's what I needed, my family and friends. So.
Now, I just talked to somebody else this morning on another interview that's going to come out after yours. He was 18, 19 when he was diagnosed, and we talked about like the cancer maturing. Did you feel that your experience at 15, 16 matured you beyond your peers?
I think to the degree of having of the capacity of what I had to deal with, in terms of all of the emotional things that come alongside with, how I felt and dealing with the social aspect and other things. But I also feel like because I was so young that maybe as I got older, I was maybe a little bit behind because I hadn't really truly dealt with it. I wanted to just be done with it, go on, be a teenager, play sports, do whatever, and I just suppressed it all. And so that was my way of dealing with it. And I think, over the years, it's come to the surface more. I had heart surgery 5 years ago at quintuple bypass. And one of the things that my wife said is you should get counseling. And I thought that's a good idea. And I found myself in those sessions talking more about my testicular cancer experience and my heart experience by probably 90 to 10, 9%, 90% to 10% because I'd never really talked about it to anybody in any depth other than kind of what happened. So
Interesting. Very interesting. Was sperm banking something that they talked about back in the 80s?
um, one of the things that, we did talk at the time, being 15, 16 years old, thinking about family and children was one of the last things on my mind because I just wanted to just be a normal teenager. By the time I had gotten to Indianapolis, in about a year after I started my chemo, the question did come up about, well, sperm bank, this and that, and they said it's too late at this point. You've had too much chemo, and so that was not an option.
We'll segue from there though to you did successfully have at least your son,
Yes.
who we'll talk about, had his own testicular cancer journey. How long after? I mean, obviously you were 15 when you were diagnosed, but how long after your treatment, and everything, was your son conceived?
I was 26, so a little over 10 years.
Nice. And had you ever lost hope that you might not father a child, given the your answer before about the sperm banking?
Yeah, I had never really thought about it. I was pretty much of the mindset that I would just not have children. They had told me that. They told me the surgery would impact me. They told me the chemo would impact me. So I was pretty much of the mindset that I would not be able to have children. And it was what it was. I was alive and had made it through it. And that was just one thing that, as the years progressed, I just accepted it.
So when your wife became pregnant, was that a big surprise?
It was a very, very big surprise to me. Yes, yes. So, and I'm blessed with him. He's 33 or 32 years old now, very, very blessed to have him.
And we mentioned that he had his own testicular cancer journey. Before that, though, I know you mentioned before we started talking on the podcast that one of the things you wanted to drive home was parents talking to their kids.
Yes, yes. When my parents were, when they were going through it, there was no knowledge of this even being a thing at all. Nowadays, there's the awareness of this, but there's from an adolescent perspective, noticing something and saying something and doing something are all different things. And when my son was very young, I impressed in his mind as he was growing older that if he sees anything abnormal, anything, to say something. And so my message to parents, both mothers and fathers, is that your young boys, to continue to educate them, starting at 8, 9, 10, all the way on up, because if you let it go and don't say anything, then you risk it having spread beyond, isolated, being the testicle itself and spreading beyond. And so through that education, my son in 2018, at age 25, came to me and said, "Dad, I noticed an abnormality." And so he had it checked out, and he went through a similar process in terms of having the orchiectomy within very quickly. We had got him into the doctor on a Monday, and he had his surgery on a Wednesday. From his perspective, it did not spread. He had the option to do radiation as more preventive. But based on the experience that I had been through and the success of the treatment, doing radiation would put him at risk if he first starting a family potentially. And so he made the decision that the risk of that and having the opportunity to have chemotherapy if something did happen and having it successful. So all those factors played into him deciding not to do anything, and he's been cancer free. He hasn't had any issues at all since 2018. So
amazing,
yep.
amazing story. So this would be a question I couldn't ask somebody who didn't have testicular cancer, because it wouldn't even be in their like zeitgeist. I don't even know if that's the right word, but I think it's the right word. But you had testicular cancer back in the 80s. Have you noticed over the last 43 years a change in like the public perception of the discussion?
Yes, I would say it's much more open. Back in the 80s, breast cancer awareness and those different things were prominent. There was no, I can go to my phone and look something up. There was none of that, right? But over time, men's health has become much more to the forefront to degrees for awareness. November, Movember, and testicular cancer awareness. So I'm really happy with what you're doing and how you're getting the word out there, and not only raising awareness, but making people feel comfortable to be able to tell their story, and help other people that are going through it in different perspective. When I was going through it at age 15, there were no child cancer centers. I was on the 8th floor at the hospital along with everybody else, somebody having knee surgery, somebody having, and I was a chemo patient by myself. I did not have anyone that I knew that I could talk to until I got to Indianapolis. And I was flabbergasted, amazed at everybody on my floor had it, and everybody could relate. And here I am, a 15-year-old kid, and everybody else is, to me it seemed old, but they're in their 20s and 30. And so yeah, I think over the years, bringing it to the forefront and raising the awareness has been very, very positive. I'm very happy to hear it and play a part in it.
Have you kept in contact with any of the guys that you met at IU? I know cell phones weren't a thing back then, so you couldn't like exchange cell phone numbers.
No, I had roommates that were in and out. People were doing orchiectomies. I didn't know at the time, but looking back, they'd be in and out in a day or two. And then I was there, for the big surgery. So it seemed like the hospital floor at the time was kind of a mix of maybe people that were there locally, and then people that were there like me that were traveling distances to come for the specialization piece of it.
Man, it's crazy. Dr. Einhorn is still around. That's insane. He probably was a child back then.
Yeah, but, he was very, very young. And credit to him for the cocktail that he had, come up with. I was only about 4 or 5 years after that, and prior to that, testicular cancer survival rates were very low. So, thanks. I'm eternally grateful to him for what he had done in his research to be able to benefit me. I still have the tinnitus and some other things from the chemo, but those are minimal in the grand scheme of things.
Have you kept up with Dr. Einhorn at all? Because he's still accessible.
Yeah, I have not. I reached out to. He was in the Grand Rapids area one time a while back, and I'd reached out to him, but I have not been in touch with him since.
Legend. He's a dream guest for this podcast, but I've tried everything I could do to get him on. I think he doesn't like the spotlight, so who can blame him? Is there anything else that you want to add that we didn't talk about already?
No, I don't think so. I think I do. I would like to share maybe just real quick. I do have a tattoo on my arm here, and it's age 15, and it's a testicular cancer ribbon. It's orchid. And then age 54, I had the heart surgery, and then it says "by the grace of God" on the bottom. So this is my reminder every day of what I've been through, and the grace of God for being able to still be alive and living and relatively normal. I do live a normal life. I mean, I do have tinnitus. I do have some fibrosis on my lungs and other permanent effects from the chemo, but those are minimal in comparison. They're just kind of normal to me now. Like the tinnitus is just kind of background noise and other things. So I'm extremely grateful to be here.
If you had to give some advice to somebody who is just diagnosed and they're not necessarily seeing the long-term vision, as someone who's over 40 years out, what would you say to them?
I would say that the chances for success are very high. I would say the road would depend on, how severe the diagnosis is. But I would say as someone who had gone through the clinical stages of these things, and now that these are well established, treatments that they've shown over time to be successful, and that normal lives can be led. The road can be difficult. That's to be expected. But at the end of the day, and when you reach the end, the success and be able to live a healthy life, like I said, nobody passing me in the street would know that I had anything, and I'm able to do anything anybody else can. So I would just say, pray, have the community around you support you, and trust your doctors, nurses, and hospital staff in what they're doing, because it's well established and shown to be highly successful.
Amazing. Are you reachable by anybody who wants to connect?
I'm on Facebook, Michael Oshinski on Facebook. Welcome to connect there, and we can share my email address on the website.
Will do. Mike Oshinski, thank you so much for being on It Takes Balls.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it.
For more information and resources for your testicular cancer journey, visit testicularcancerawarenessfoundation.org.